By Jason Lisk, November 29, 2017, 8:00 p.m. ET. Follow at Jason Lisk. Here are your starter rankings for Week 13 in Fantasy Football. PPR scoring. Quarterbacks: Tom Brady at BUF, Russell Wilson vs. Carson, Wentz at C, Philip Rivers vs. Kirk Cousins at Dal, Cam Newton at No, Jared Goff at RE, Drew Brees vs. Carr, Marcus Mariota vs. How, Ben Roethlisberger at Sin, Blake Bortles vs. Ind, Alex Smith at NYJ, Matt Ryan vs. Min, Jameis Winston at GB, Tyrod Taylor vs. Name, Matthews, Stafford at Bal, Derek Carr vs. NYG, Case Keenum at ATL, Blaine Gabbert vs. Lara, Dak Prescott vs. was Jimmy Garoppolo vs. Chibret Hundley vs. TB, Geno Smith at Oak, Josh McCown vs. Casey, Trevor Seaman at Mia, Deshaun Kaiser at Lack, Andy Dalton vs. Pitt, Jacoby Brissett vs. Jack, Joe Flacco vs. DE, TJ Cutler vs. Den Mitchell, Trubisky vs. SF, Tom Savage at 10, running backs Le'Veon Bell at Sin, Todd Gurley at RE, Melvin Gordon vs. Clee, Alvin Kamara vs. Carr, Leonard Fournette vs. Ind, Christian McCaffrey at No, LaShawn McCoy vs. Nate, Carlos Hyde at Chi, Kareem Hunt at NYJ, Mark Ingram vs. Carr, Jordan Howard vs. SF, Jerick McKinnon at ATL, Joe Mixon vs. Pitt, Somahe Perini at Dal, Lamar Miller at 10, Alex Collins vs. DET, Kenyon Drake vs. Den, Jamal Williams vs. TB, Adrian Peterson vs. Rex Burkhead at BUF, Duke Johnson at Lack, Devonta Freeman vs. Mindion Lewis at BUF, DeMarco Murray vs. How, Orleans Darkwa at Oak, Devontae Booker at Mia, Frank Gore at 10, Marshawn Lynch vs. NYG, Rod Smith vs. was Austin Eckler vs. Clee, Danny Woodhead vs. DET, Matt Forte vs. Casey, Tevin Coleman vs. Minamir Abdullah at Bal, Peyton Barber at GB, Alfred Morris vs. was Latavius Murray at ATL, JD McKissick vs. Phi, Doug Martin at GB, Mike Davis vs. Phi, Bilal Powell vs. Casey, Isaiah Crowell at Lack, TJ Yeldon vs. Ind, Derek Henry vs. How, Tariq Cohen vs. SF, Jonathan Stewart at No, Corey Clement at CJ Ajayi at CJ Anderson at Mia, Theo Riddick at Bell, wide receivers Antonio Brown at Sin, Julio Jones vs. Min, DeAndre Hopkins at 10, Keenan Allen vs. Clee, Michael Thomas vs. Carr, Adam Thielen at ATL, Mike Evans at GB, Brandon Cooks at BUF, AJ Green vs. Pitt, Tyreek Hill vs. NYJ, Jamison Crowder at Dal, Larry Fitzgerald vs. Lara, Doug Baldwin vs. Phi, Jarvis Landry vs. Den, Robbie Anderson vs. Casey, Devin Funchess at No, Devontae Adams vs. TB, Des Bryant vs. was Demarius Thomas at Mia, Alshon Jeffrey at C, Stephon Diggs at ATL, Marquise Lee vs. Ind, Golden Tate at Bal, Marvin Jones at Bal, Paul Richardson vs. Phi, Cooper Kupp at RA, Ted Ginn vs. Carr, Emmanuel Sanders at Mia, Mohamed Sanu vs. Minty Hilton at Jack, Mike Wallace vs. DET, Sammy Watkins at RA, Jermaine Kearse vs. Casey, Sterling Shepard at Oak, Deshaun Jackson at GB, Jeremy Maclin vs. DET, Corey Coleman at Lack, Kenny Stills vs. Den, Corey Davis vs. House, Seth Roberts vs. NYG, Marchese Goodwin at Chi, Josh Gordon at Lack, Josh Doctson at Dal, Devontae Parker vs. Den, Jordy Nelson vs. TB, Deed Westbrook vs. Ind, Juju Smith-Schuster at Sin, Nelson Aguilar at C, Roger Luis at Oak, Danny Amendola at BUF, tight ends Rob Gronkowski at BUF, Zach Ertz at C, Travis Kelce at NYJ, Jimmy Graham vs. Phi, Delaney Walker vs. Hal, Vernon Davis at was Evan N. Graham at Oak, Jared Cook vs. NYG, Jack Doyle hit Jack Austin, Seferian Jenkins vs. KC, Kyle Rudolph at ATL, Hunter Henry vs. Clee, Jason Witten vs. was Charles Clay vs. Nay, Ricky Seal, Scroft vs. Laro, J. Howard at GB, Tyler Croft vs. Pitt, Austin Hooper vs. Min, CJ Fedorowicz at 10, Eric Ebron at Bell, Julius Thomas vs. Den, Ben Watson vs. DET, Marcedes Lewis vs. Ind, Greg Olson at No, David Joku at Lack. Commentary, Fantasy Football, NFL.